Welcome to part 3 of the Siberian Bobcat. The next thing we're going to do on our Bobcat is darken the area around the head. For this, I'm using 508.5 Prussian Blue Rembrandt, and I'm using just the end of it, and I'm using a back and forth crosshatch movement to apply even color. I want to get the background finished right around the head before I add the final hairs. I'm going to speed this part up a little bit while I put this dark color around the head. Now that we've added the darks, I can start to add some of the final hairs. So I'm using my white New Pastel 211. I'm using the edge of the stick to pull the white hairs out around the ear, and I'm also using it on the inside of the ear to add some brighter hairs. I also want to get this muzzle brighter, so I'm using the tip of my 211 New Pastel to make the hair a little brighter, and also on the chin. And by using the tip, I can add little dots to look like snowflakes falling on his face. I'm darkening up some areas with my charcoal pencil. Just looking around and seeing what I need to do to bring my kitty cat further to completion. I'm adding a little more dark color around the face. Now I'm adding one of our other blues from our background color range. This is 506.7 Ultramarine Blue Deep, and then I can also add some 505.8, which is Ultramarine Blue Light. So we have 4 different colors. Now I'm using 100.5 white, which represents the snow, and I am using a circular motion and not making an even line. I want it to be a gradual blend so it looks more like snow. So I want to blend back and forth between the colors till I get it just the way I want it to look. Now you can add more snow in the background if you want to. It's your painting, and it's however you want it to look. Now we're continuing our background. I'm putting down a layer of ultramarine blue light, kind of a middle value. This is the 0.7, 506.7 Ultramarine Blue Deep. I'm using a crosshatch motion to do that. And now I'm using that same 508.5 Prussian Blue to make it a little darker. next to the back of our bobcat. I don't have to totally complete the background, but I do want to get enough color around and close to the body of the subject so that I can complete the hairs, and then later I will finish the background. I'm going to speed this part up a little bit. I'm just cross-hatching the background blue colors in the same manner as described before. Now I have my 211 new pastel, and I'm using the edge, the sharp edge, to add hair to the bobcat, under his chin, on his leg. These are the brightest hairs. I'm doing this very carefully. And when my pastel gets dull, I go back and sharpen it, adding a little bit more snow on the left side as well. Now I have my 506.9 Ultra Blue Deep Rembrandt, which is the lightest color we're using, and I'm lightening up some of the background area. And you can also see I've added some of this color underneath the front outstretched leg of the bobcat. So I'm going right up to where the bobcat is, and this is kind of my base coat, and I can put snow on top of that. I'm trying to create a downward angle so that the viewer can tell he's running downhill in the snow. After adding some more darks, additional darks to the background, I'm using my 100.5 white Rembrandt, and I am using kind of a circular motion and kind of a crosshatch to put over the light blue that we put down previously to create the look of snow in my background. I'm creating shadows in the snow with the 707.7 gray Rembrandt pastel. I'm also using some additional blue with the 505.8 or 506.7 ultramarine blue. I'm adding some 505.8 ultramarine blue, and I'm putting some white with the 100.5 over top of that to kind of blend that blue color together. Now, if you want to add more background snow to the top of your painting, you can also do that. I'm going to speed this up a little bit and add the final background to the top of my painting. When you're doing this, just keep in mind to vary your colors according to where you really want the focus to be, which is on the animal. So use the 4 different colors of blue and blend them together until it gets the way you want it to be. I generally add the medium values and then the lighter values at the top and the darker value around my subject. I'm using some of the medium value blue right over to the edge of where my painting's going to be, and coming in there, creating the look of fluffed up snow as the cat has gone racing through it. I'm going to add a little white. I use the end of the white to kind of go in a circular motion to make it look like it's moving. So now I'm going to base coat underneath the Bobcat with 707.7 light gray. And we're going to put in these shadows. So we're going to start with that. And we're going to create the cast shadow with a coat of 506.7 Ultra Blue Deep. So I'm going right over that cast shadow. I'm using my Rembrandt 100 white to put that directly underneath the cat and above the shadow, which indicates the snow that is on the ground behind the bobcat. Now we need to darken this shadow, and I'm going to do that with a new pastel 279 cold medium gray. So this is darker than some of the other grays we've used to just put down there and make that shadow color a little darker. Here I'm using the tip of my 211 new pastel white, kind of brighten up that area and define the edge of that shadow a little bit where it goes into the blue. I'm putting a little 506.7 ultramarine blue over that gray. I'm just kind of blending that area a little bit, which looks a little better to me. I'm using it on its end. I want the shadow to be nice and crisp. And I'm going to even around the edges with my 211 new pastel white. I've decided to go a little deeper with that shadow, so I'm using the 508.5 dark blue that we used in the background. I want the shadow to look like a shadow, but I don't want it to look like all gray or black or anything like that. I want it to use color. And then I'm using my new pastel to come in and sharpen that edge up. I'm using the edge of the Cretacolor Glacier Blue, number 151, to put a bit of that light value down. This is a very nice color. I like to keep this particular color around. New Pastel doesn't have one quite like it. So I'm lightening up the shadow a bit with the Glacier Blue. Here I'm using 345 New Pastel Harbor Blue, just add a darker blue. It's very similar to the Rembrandts in colors, but because it's smaller, it allows me to get into these tighter spaces. I love this color. It's just slightly different. Here I'm using the 299 New Pastel, just the back edge of it, to lighten up the shadow a little bit. I'm base coating the foreground with a Rembrandt color 506.9 Ultra Blue Light. And I'm going over that with the 707.7 gray. I decided that I might need a darker value, so I picked up my gray. The blue wasn't quite dark enough. And now I'm going over the gray with the lighter blue. And that smooths out the gray. And it also dulls down the blue a little bit. The gray, you can see the gray through the blue. So we're making a nice, even foreground. Here I'm using my Rembrandt 100.5 to add the foreground snow next to the shadow. The foreground, so now I'm going to base coat the back of the Bobcat with my 707.7 light gray. I'm going over the gray with 538.5 Mars Violet, going all the way up the back with that, cross-hatching carefully. This is one of my favorite colors. It's just great in everything. All animals, anyway. Now I have a small piece of 353 cordovan, that hard new pastel, that I'm using over top of the Mars Violet, and I'm pushing down with that, and it's pushing the color into the nap of the paper. Now I'm going to use my blue to get up, my medium blue, to get up closer to the fur, and I'm going to darken that with that 508.5. It's almost a navy blue. It's very, very dark blue. Now I'm adding more 707.7 base coat to the bottom area of the cat. This is a very important area for us to develop, where the light is going to come through in areas underneath. And so we're going to accurately portray that with a change of color. But first we're going to base coat it with the gray. Now here I'm using a new pastel, 279 cold medium gray. I'm using the tip of it to color the very edges of the fur on the bottom of the cat. It creates a shadow. So I'm carefully delineating those. It's darker than the 707.7 base coat that we put down. And it's showing up very well against the white snow. Now to add the glow of the light coming through reflected from the snow behind, I'm using some 276 buff, and then I'm going to use the edge of a 211 white new pastel to reverse paint the bright white snow that's showing through the fur at the bottom of the Bobcat. So I'm using the bottom of my stick, and here I'm using the edge, and that's the bright snow that's reflecting through from behind the Bobcat. That'll get a little clearer as we continue on. I'm adding a little more gray, 707.7 Rembrandt, pushing a little harder. Adding a little more color there. You can see that really makes and creates a better value there. Now moving to the top of the shoulders, I'm using my black, the edge of my black 229 new pastel to add some hair. I'm also using some 305 spruce blue over that black, or underneath it, I would say. That makes such a difference by adding that blue. It just makes the black richer. So after I've put down the blue, I'm going back over that with 229 black. So I'm adding all the dark hair using the bottom of my 229 stick. As I'm not really doing single hairs at this point, I'm doing groups of hairs, putting in the basic shapes. And this is the 353 cordovan. And the 223 burnt umber, which is a good medium brown. Here I'm using the back end of the new pastel. To make more fur-like strokes. But I'm not making any of these as distinct as the hair around the face, which is where we want to draw the attention of our viewer. I want to point out too that this color blends the black with the cordovan. It helps to blend this whole area together because it acts as that mid-tone. I'm using the white pastel pencil number 100 Carbothello to add some white hair in the shadow area. They don't need to be as bright as the ones that we added in the front because it does go into the shadows. And now I'm going to use a 299 new pastel. Or you could still use the 100 pastel pencil. It's easier for me to use the pastel stick, but I'm giving you an alternate way to add hair if you're not as comfortable using the stick. I'm using my 233 new pastel raw sienna to add a few gold hairs in this area. It helps to tie together the color scheme. It adds a nice accent. This is cocoa brown, which is a nice light warm brown. It's lighter than the burnt umber, the 223 that we used, and it's darker than the 233 raw sienna. So it adds a nice color. And this is the 299 light gray, again, adding hair. Going back and forth between the colors till I get just the right look that I want. I'm using my 229 black new pastel on the edge to add a few black hairs in between the white ones that I added. You could also use your charcoal pencil if you wanted to. Here I'm using the flat side of my Rembrandt dark gray, which is 704.3, to just darken down this area slightly. And I'm using the bottom of my 229 New Pastel Black. I'm not making hairs. I'm adding shades of color. I'm adding blocks of color in here. We don't want to add too many hairs. That's overwhelming and it takes away from the overall look of your painting. So I'm just, now I'm using the 259 gray, doing the same thing, darkening down that area, getting the tone down, pulling a few hairs into the background. We'll come back and probably sharpen that up later. I'm back to the black pastel 229 now, and I have it on the edge. I am adding hairs, but you can see this whole darker area on the upper back of the cat. It has a variation of tones and color without being overly detailed. We want to put the detail in some places, but not everywhere. This is a 353 cordovan. I'm using it on the edge, but it is not sharp, so it's adding, again, a softened area, but it's dark brown. So I'm switching back to the black, 229. I'm really liking the blend of colors that I get with the sepia and the black and the brown and the cocoa brown in the lighter areas. I'm liking the way it looks. The focus is really on the face of the cat, which is what we want. And here I'm using the 223 burnt umber. As I work down the body of the cat, I've switched to the 259 New Pastel Dark Gray because this hair on his stomach is white. So we want to undercoat it with gray. And I've used a medium value of gray with our 707.7 Rembrandt. So here I am using the dark gray. And now I am adding the black on top of that. I'm adding a little 353 brown into this area as I work down to the outer edge of the cat's stomach. Now I'm using my 299 to add light gray hair, which represents the white hair in shadow. I've sped this section up a little. I'm just lightly adding the hair and moving down towards the bottom or stomach area of our bobcat. Now, after using the gray, I'm switching to my white New Pastel. I'm using the edge to add brighter hair over top and in between the gray hair and the brown hair I previously applied to make this area a little bit brighter. I've also sped this section up a little so you can see how I do that. In this section, I'm using my 276 buff to warm up a few of these hairs, to add, this cat is very multicolored, so I'm going to add some additional color by using the 276 buff and also using the 253 Cocoa Brown, which is a really, it's a nice light warm brown. It's a good one to have in your toolbox of colors. So I'm adding that in too. We're back in real time now instead of being sped up. I'm also using the 353, or you could also use your Indian Red, which is 263, to add in this area. And then 229 black for darker hair. I'm using my white charcoal pencil to add some long hair accents in this area. I like the white charcoal pencil for this. I've told you guys before, it's not pastel, it's calcium carbonate, and it makes a nice thin line, which is really good for accent hairs. Here I'm using the Conte pencil number 47, Naples Yellow, to add a few light warm hairs. This is an alternative to using 276. And this is the new pastel Sanguine. The color number is 213. This is a wonderful color to add a red into this area. I think it really brightens up the Bobcat. And here I'm using 229 black. Now I think I'm going to add some white, some 211 new pastel, brighten up this backlit area underneath our Bobcat, and putting that in because it is kind of like it is a background before we add final hairs on top. Now I'm going to tell you a great trick. This is the graphite pencil, the 9B graphite pencil. If you can't find 9B, use 8B. It's really good for adding a shadow in areas without being super obvious. You can use it to gray down areas, which is what I did underneath the Bobcat's chin. I'm going to add a few more black areas here. Join me in part 4 when we finish up our Bobcat.